The common thread across my work is creating spaces where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is brought back as our anchor. Emotion is what actually makes people move. This was before emotional intelligence was really in the mainstream the way it is now. I remember very vividly sitting there with my boss's boss, having the conversation with them about a negotiation that to me looked like it was going completely sideways. And he was like, no, this is exactly where I wanted to go. And like walking me through how this is the currency that holds value. So that to me is without a doubt the singular skill that allowed the Prophet ﷺ to transform the world in 23 years out of the middle of the desert.
Assalamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Asheq, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Wa alaikum salam. I'm doing great, alhamdulillah. I'm honored to be here. We're really looking forward and excited for this conversation, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. No, glad to have you. The Deen Deals community is definitely in for a big surprise. And honestly, I was thinking about how to go for an introduction. Obviously, we could say so many cool things about you, but I wanted to turn things around a little bit. And frankly, as I found out on our prep call that, mashallah, you're actually from Virginia, Maryland, the DMV area. And that prompted me to think, Brother Asheq, I don't really know you. I hadn't heard of you a lot until you joined the Qalam crew. And I was very surprised to find out you're a local. Why is that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very purposeful. I got to correct you out the bat also. I'm a Texan like through and through.
Okay.
Grew up in Lubbock, Texas. So that was my first, once we moved over from Bangladesh, we spent, my first 10, 12 years in America in Texas. So
Mashallah,
it's still home
mashallah.
for me, but DMV is a very close second. We spent over 20 years here, alhamdulillah. And it's, I can't count the number of really close relationships and friends and the impact that it had on my life, honestly. But I'm also have very purposely been behind the scenes, and that was intentional. So when I think about the work I've been doing, and especially the work that we're about to do with Mirage, it's a little bit uncomfortable for me to be in front of a camera and talking. But as we'll talk about, like it's important for us to get stories out that I think are gonna help bring the ummah together in a different way,
Inshallah. So with that, I mean, I could do the general introduction of mashallah, you're from my perspective, at least my research or our research as a team, you're a serial entrepreneur, you've had successful exits, you're now the executive director of Qalam, you're the co-founder of Mirage, the Miraj Collective. But Brother Asheq, in the most respectful way possible, who are you? Who would you say you are? What's your story? Give us your background.
Yeah, I think about this often in terms of like, how does what I'm working on come together? And I think at a really high level, I'm focused on this one big question, which is what institutions and leaders do we need as an ummah over the next 20, 25 years, and how do we actually build them? And so I think the common thread across my work is creating spaces where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is brought back as our anchor. And not just in theory, but in how we lead, how we build, how we make decisions. And so a big part of that is obviously what we do at Qalam and Roots. I'm blessed to be around the incredible mashayikh and staff that are there. And our focus there is not just on education, but on education that actually nurtures and transforms communities. How do we even help people feel even a fraction of the warmth that they felt when the Sahaba were around the Prophet ﷺ? How do we create spaces that feel welcoming no matter where someone is in their relationship with Allah? How do we develop scholars and leaders who can take that model forward across the country and beyond? And then alongside that, as you mentioned, we recently started Miraj Collective as well with my co-founders, Sheikh Mikhail and Brother Uthman, who I know you know. And Miraj really exists to develop the Muslim men who can lead themselves first by aligning ambition and faith and fulfilling our responsibility as the Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, and then carrying that into our families, our work, the things that we build. That includes, community for sohbah, the one-on-one work that we're doing. We're launching an initiative for founders soon, inshallah. And then I'm also currently involved on the investment side as well. We have a VC platform focused on Muslim founders specifically. And I'm involved in a couple of the larger initiatives that are happening right now, focused on convening and connecting some of the serious efforts that are happening across the world. So it's really exciting to see the energy in the ummah right now. And I think it kind of aligns with where, my career has kind of brought me to this point where I'm able to benefit from the company of the people that are doing these amazing things. Alhamdulillah.
So, mashallah, we understand you have a great background, I think in the legal space and having run successful companies as well and having a great exit. We'd love to hear more about, that rise pre-Miraj, what that looked like for you and what
pre your Miraj.
Yeah, pre your Miraj, exactly.
Yeah. Everybody has their own ascension, right? Yeah, I mean, I guess I could go back to, I had a very typical like immigrant upbringing, right? So we grew up really, really poor. My dad, when he moved here from Bangladesh, was doing his PhD at Lubbock, Texas, at Texas Tech University. I remember, I think that first year we lived on like $700 a year, right? So it was interesting, and it was. I never felt like the emptiness of that. I always felt like I had what I need, but it also teaches you certain lessons along the way, right? So like fulfilling that dream of education wasn't optional for us. Like the sacrifices that he made, he would drive, an hour and a half to go to work just so we could be in a better school district so we can get access to education, for example. And so the expectation of excellence was something that was just understood. And I think that created, obviously pressure, but also helped me to develop some of the discipline that you need to succeed in anything that you're doing. Yeah, I think about that sometimes with our kids. Like we need them to feel a little bit uncomfortable, let them deal with adversity a little bit. I think we're too soft on our kids sometimes out of love. Obviously, I see this in myself. I see this even at Kalamatel. I joke with our Asheq all the time. Like the students are really comfortable, right? Like let them deal with a little bit of pain here and there. But so I think that kind of shaped how I thought about my career, my future, what success looked like. I kind of stumbled into law school. It wasn't something that was really planned out. I was talking to my now wife at the moment, and she was like, "You need to have some kind of career," right? And so I had always kind of been instilled in me that you have to go to med school, be a doctor, typical Bengali upbringing, and that didn't quite work out. And so I pivoted to business again with no real plan. And so I said, okay, well, law school sounds like something that I can do. And so I took the LSATs over the summer and kind of went to law school. And it was the first time I really felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I showed up to class. I was unprepared. Everybody had kind of read over the summer. And a teacher called on me like the first day of class. I had no idea what to say, right? So I was like, well, what am I doing? It was the first time that I had really had that feeling of like, I don't really know why I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing with my life? Is this what I really want? Right. So
that's day one of law school, you said?
Day one. Yeah. So the law school is all Socratic method, right? So this was UVA, day one, all super bright people, mashallah. And so I kind of strolled in there thinking that it was going to be, like college, pretty straightforward. And man, they took it to me that first day. So I almost knew right from the start that I didn't really want to be a lawyer after that experience. But it was definitely a valuable experience for me and gave me a great framework for how to think through, just about anything. And so that kind of kicked off my career. So I started out my career as an attorney, doing corporate transactional work, did a law firm.
And what does that mean? Just for those who don't know.
Yeah, so a lot of mergers, acquisitions, looking at a lot of contracts, a lot of due diligence. So from the get-go, I was involved in this space of companies coming together, looking at what builds value, looking at what helps really accelerate the growth trajectory of a company, and so kind of getting under the hood of what that looks like. And then right out of law school, I went to a company called Symantec. You guys might be too young to remember. Symantec is one of the earlier cybersecurity companies from back in the day.
Yeah.
And so when I joined, it was right when Symantec was merging with Veritas. And so it went from like a $2 billion company to a $4 billion company overnight.
Wow.
And so I was involved in a lot of that kind of integration. And so even seeing all the pieces that go into to making that happen, all the people challenges that come with that, all of the, let's say, interesting political situations that come out of, those types of things coming together. It was a crash course in just business in general and how people react to things and what motivates and drives people. And so I was fortunate to have some really great mentors early in my career, not Muslim, but I learned a lot from that early stage that competence was only going to take you so far. So all the things that I focused on, like, discipline and intelligence, responsibility, those are all helpful, but kind of expected, right? That's just the table stakes to sit at the table and have like a conversation.
Right.
Well, I remember that one of the really early things that I learned is that there's, basically like 3 invisible currencies you're operating with in any situation. So competence is one, but that's really just about information, right? I mean, that's largely commodity today with like AI and what's out there. That's the easiest thing to kind of get yourself up to speed on. But then the second was, I'd say, like trust. And that's, important and built through character. And there's lots out there now about how character is one of the best drivers of success and predictors of success. That wasn't, I guess, really a popular thought back then, but clearly, like, earning trust with people would put you in a different seat of the conversation. And then the biggest thing I think was the most valuable lesson was the idea of emotion, and that emotion is what actually makes people move. And this was before emotional intelligence was really in the mainstream the way it is now. But I mean, that was, I remember very vividly sitting there with my boss's boss, having the conversation with them about a negotiation that to me looked like it was going completely sideways. And he was like, no, this is exactly where I want it to go. And like walking me through how this is the currency that holds value. This is what, and especially in the world we're about to step into. And so why we focus a lot on like prophetic intelligence from a Mirage perspective is this idea of emotions is what really moves people in one direction or another. And so I got really good at reading people and anticipating what was going to drive behavior. And that put me in rooms at a really, really young age with some really powerful people. And I think that helped fast track some of my professional development along the way.
Brother, a question for you. So you talked about like confidence and negotiation, being in legal, we're in sales, so we deal with like, obviously contract negotiation, also with lawyers and contracts. When you say you learned all that stuff, are you talking about when you're negotiating contracts for companies? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean that's part of it, but I mean that's very technical, right? So when you're negotiating contracts with somebody, it's very technical. That's especially with lawyers. Like if you've ever been in a legal negotiation, that's not a fun conversation.
No. Right? I've seen a couple. It sounds very, very rough.
Yeah, it's not fun at all. But I'm talking more about what happens behind the scenes of that negotiation, right? So once you leave the room, the conversations that you're having after the conversation, or even the conversations that you're having weeks leading up to that conversation, and the way the people that are really seasoned are able to sit down with people, understand where they sit in this whatever conversation we're having. How do they then read their reaction, anticipate their reaction, and then start to shape that along the way? And it can be very manipulative, right? And so I think, one of we talk about prophetic intelligence instead of emotional intelligence because there is a moral component to it from our perspective as Muslims. Like you don't want to just take that as a superpower and now start to just drive people anywhere, right? You want them to drive them towards good. But that was, if you've been around anybody that's really, really good at leadership or just really, really good at working with people, like if you ever walked into a room, you just feel like, man, this guy just gets me. Right?
Yeah,
like they really understand who I am. That's what's happening behind the scenes, right? Is that they're just masters of influence that understand the little ebbs and flows that drive people. It's also what made the Prophet ﷺ so unique, right?
Yeah.
Like the Prophet ﷺ could just be interacting with any single individual, any person he's working with, and he makes you feel like you are the most important thing in the world, right? He's saying exactly the right thing at the right moment. And so how do we take some of those skills and apply that to different aspects of our life?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think Sheikh Mikael Smith, I think he wrote a book about the Prophet's emotional intelligence as well, right? I didn't finish it, but I bought it many years ago, and I remember reading a lot of it, and it talked a lot about that and how, that is what a lot of successful mashayikh that I know nowadays, when I talk to Sheikh Yahya and others and I go to their talks, and they step in the room, you feel like they're able to just know and read everybody, and it's like, it almost seems magical, right? But it does make you stand out as a leader. MashaAllah.
Yeah. So Sheikh Mikael literally wrote the book on it, like with the heart in mind.
Yeah,
and
that's what it was.
Goes through with the heart. But yeah, and even if you think about like when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala like introduces the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran, right, to us, basically, like, he's talking about emotional intelligence. Like he's talking about this. I brought you somebody from amongst you that's, really concerned with you, that's concerned for your outcome. Like these are all like hallmarks of emotional intelligence. And that's where, Sheik's pulling his book from that verse. And you can just see it. Like you can immediately feel when somebody has concern for you. You can immediately feel when somebody makes you feel relaxed and comfortable, makes you feel seen, and that disarms you. And now you're more open to have a conversation with that person, listen to what that person is saying. So that to me is without a doubt the singular skill that allowed the Prophet ﷺ to transform the world in 23 years out of the middle of the desert. And it's what allows, great founders, great leaders, anybody who's doing any great thing, great leaders. Like you take, I'm a big basketball fan, right? So you take any leader, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron, they may have different approaches to this, and they may have different levels of emotional intelligence or different aspects of emotional intelligence, but they know how to push the right button to drive somebody, right? And so I think that's if I had to think about like any foundational skill for leadership, that's the thing I would tell anybody to learn, is like focus on emotional intelligence.
SubhanAllah. No, that's really interesting. And to bring it back to the legal rooms and those kinds of negotiations, would you say that initial experience kind of in working for someone else was what kind of carved you into be able to take steps that followed? Like I'm curious to kind of hear like how that progressed from developing and kind of putting yourself in the fire per se, learning everything, and then versus like today a lot of youngins want to just hey, I'm not going to work for anyone, I'm just going to do this myself, right?
Yeah. I don't know if there was kind of like this aha moment or anything like that for me. I mean, it was definitely being in the room with those people, and it wasn't just the lawyers. Honestly, like I think the opportunities that I had put me in front of a lot of just business leaders in general, and so CEOs, CFOs, executives at the highest level. And so when you see people at that level interacting the way that they do, it definitely evolves your thinking in a different way. And like I don't think there was any one moment that sealed it for me that said I want to go out and, let's say, create something on my own, for example. But I think the one thing it did teach me was I always made decisions based on opportunity, like what I could learn, who I could learn from. So I wasn't necessarily optimizing for salary or titles, but I'm optimizing for things like exposure, for learning, for who I'm surrounding myself with. And I think the one thing it really taught me was to be okay with discomfort and unpredictability. And that's that anybody that's going to take a risk is going to have to get comfortable with unpredictability. And I think that's really what put me down this path. And so I was at a crossroad of where to invest now. I could continue to climb up the corporate ladder. This was also around the time when I was starting to study Islam a little bit. So there was also the kind of the opportunity to move away and study, move away altogether and just study the deen or take a step back.
Yeah. And this was 2 years into your career, or how long? How far?
Yes, I mean, this is probably 5-6 years into my career, so not right away, but I mean I was still in my 20s at the time, right? So I mean it was really, really young. And so when I was thinking about what is the next step to take, definitely like money was a focus, but it wasn't like the end all be all for me. So it wasn't like I was looking to replicate the lifestyle that these people had necessarily. But it was, I came from, I don't know if you guys have read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? But that's, there's definitely like the working class mentality and approach to like immigrant families. And that's definitely how I came up, right? So like even now today, my dad has conversations with my son, Ibrahim, and his push to him is still, okay, just, you can do all these things, but be a doctor, right? And that's the mindset that we grew up with. And so it's a very like rigid, safe path. And so I think like I broke out of that mold, very, very quickly as I was working with these people. I just realized that wasn't what made them successful, and whatever that definition of success looked like. And so when I got to that crossroads, Allah opened the door for me and just presented an opportunity where, one of the companies that I had been working with was looking to bring in some investment capital and was looking to scale, had kind of scaled back. And so the opportunity just kind of arise for me to take that over and kind of drive that in a different way. And I just took that leap.
So you'd say that the relationships that you're able to like establish by way of being in the corporate hustle gave you the opportunity. Like you were in the right rooms, you put yourself in the right rooms, you optimized for those right rooms, and essentially that led to the right opportunity.
Yeah, I would say it was a combination of being in the right rooms with the right people, and so getting exposure to that world and exposure to kind of how they think. I think that was definitely it, and then also just the opportunity of, having that path presented to me. I don't know that I would have like just gone out and built something if it wasn't just staring me at the face right as I was thinking about these things, right? So I think there's definitely something to be said about Allah picking the right time and moment for you to be able to capitalize on some of the things that you've been thinking about. Honestly, I wish I could go back and say that I was super intentional about it and took like all the right steps to make it happen. I think I was, if I could say I was intentional about anything, it was really just intentional about who I'm surrounding myself with and consciously not making the decision based on the typical, let's say, career ladder of salary and title. But other than that, it was a lot of things coming together, right place at the right time.
So let me ask a little bit more on that. When you say being around the right people too, is it that there were like leaders in your industry that you're like we have people in our industry in the sales world. There's tech leaders for folks who are in the more IT side of the house.
Yeah.
There's like thought leaders that you can go work for or whatever. Is it that you were like actively trying to be working alongside those kinds of people, or like I'm just curious to kind of hear like where that came up from.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been drawn to people who can lead and influence people. So it wasn't so much that I was looking for any particular, let's say, archetype of like person, but I would know if I came across somebody that, this is somebody that has something that I don't have. And it could be anything. It could be somebody that, let's say, they're a great public speaker and I wasn't a great public speaker, right? So like I want to understand like how do you like put yourself in that person's shoes and pick that skill up. So I think like that's what I would look for. And then naturally, when you look for that, I'm always looking for like the best of the best. I'm looking for talent. And it just so happened that I was able to be in the right rooms with the right people. So I'm in rooms with CEOs. I'm in rooms with, let's say, angel investors. I'm in the rooms with venture capital folks that are thinking about this in this way. And it doesn't have to be those way. I mean, I've met like incredible people that are like individual contributors in a sales position, for example. I've met incredible people that are teachers and just any industry that you can think about. But the common thread amongst all of them was that they were all curious to learn something, and they were able to share and distill that information in a way that stuck with me. And so that was like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I feel like they're making it easy for me. That's the people that I feel like I learned the most from. And those are the people I think share those experiences.
SubhanAllah, I once heard something about like the smartest people are ones who could take like a complex thing and distill it in like layman terms, right? So mashallah, that's I really like that. And I don't, one thing I just think about a lot with as you were saying that is like, SubhanAllah, like that is just not the mindset that like is common, right? Like a lot of people when they're looking for a job, it's like, what's my on-target earning? What's the salary base bonus? What you know what I mean? But you optimizing for learning, that's even pre-Miraj. I love to hear that, mashallah. So one thing, and Muhammad, if you have anything, definitely chime in here. But one thing I'm curious to understand a little bit more on is like, okay, you're climbing the corporate ladder. Opportunities are kind of finding you as you go, right? You talked a little bit about the Islamic portion. So as you're growing in the corporate side, I'm curious to hear, like, what was your life like in that time? Like, I can only imagine it was like intense hours. How are you making time for family, friends, Deen, your fitness? Like, what was that kind of side of your life? I feel like a lot of us struggle with the balance, especially early in our careers.
Sure.
So
yeah, no, it's really, really difficult. And I think like, I don't think I really thought about much of the integration of Deen and work until I met, my Asheq in like, let's say my late 20s, right? Of course, I was Muslim, and I never shied away from the fact that I was Muslim. But it wasn't that I was actively trying to give dawah or even project a certain representation of a Muslim in the workplace, right? And so that it wasn't really manifesting itself in that way. I think that I would purposely make time for things that were important to me. So I think there was always that sense that I'm going to focus my time and energy on what I find the most valuable. So that it was one of the other early things I picked up from one of my mentors, is that there is just nothing more valuable than your time. It just so happened that maybe I wasn't focusing my time on the right things, right? So it probably would have been better for me to spend a little bit more time on my deen. It probably would have been better to spend a little bit more time with, let's say, even family, right? I think there's a huge cost to going up that ascension to your family. Like, they made a lot of sacrifices. My wife felt, I'm sure, the weight of me not being around, working 12, 14, 15-hour days. My kids felt the weight of me not being around. They had to all carry the load at the home. So you really can't do this without a supportive family. So I think that was definitely something that kept me grounded. But the one habit that I did get into was every Sunday, I would sit and I would just plan what I wanted to get done this week. And there would be like 3 to 5 non-negotiables. It doesn't matter what it was. Sometimes it was work. Sometimes it was, I just need to go connect with this person. Sometimes it was, I need to go to my son's basketball game, like whatever that may be. But those 3 to 5 non-negotiables just did not move. And that's how I kind of prioritize my time. And so I know I'm not going to be able to balance everything. And that's okay. And I know I'm probably not going to get to every single thing that's on my list, and that's okay too. But can I prioritize and can I think through what's most important to me this week? And at least week to week, I've got some sense of progress that's happening.
SubhanAllah, that prioritizing aspect is something that I see, in every interaction I have with people who are very successful, the ones that are able to manage their time. Because you mentioned time is the most valuable resource, and no matter what you do, how much money you make, how impactful you are, everybody has those same 24 hours in a day. So I love that Sunday habit, because when you set that structure and you put things in the calendar and you commit to them happening over the long run, that has a lot of benefit. SubhanAllah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also like, it's a really big challenge, because I think a lot of people spend their time on things not for themselves, but for what that means for the outside world, right? So you spend a lot of time thinking about, asking, how does this look? How does this look to my family? How does this look to my coworkers? How does this look to the friends I'm trying to impress, right? But when you shift your focus away from that and you start thinking about, what does this cost me? Not in terms of money, but what does this cost me in terms of time? Then it starts to reframe the value that you put on any particular activity that you're working on.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, one time somebody told me something very impactful, which was when you say yes to somebody or one thing, you're saying no to something else. So there's always that cost. You tell it's yes to work, it's no to your family, it's no to your health. If you say yes to something else, it's probably saying no to work. And it's just a matter of balance and prioritizing what matters in your life for your goals, SubhanAllah. Yeah. And one time I was actually talking with Sheikh Yahya about this, and I was telling him how I just really admire someone's time, his time management, what he does. And he was telling me the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the most impactful man in history, and he was able to do so much, and really, and he was the busiest, right? He had the most important job. But you hear these stories of him giving attention to. I think that the moment I brought this up to him was in the khutbah. Somebody had mentioned, or maybe Sheikh Yahya himself had mentioned, like how a girl came to him and asked him a question. And he gave her full attention. It was like, nowadays you get some big shot that gets asked something, but I don't have time to answer you. Like, send me an email. And it was SubhanAllah, very, very impactful to hear that story.
No, for sure. But we have no excuse, right? I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, like, if you just look at his example, the challenges that he went through in his life, the weight that he was carrying, that nobody can like even begin to understand. But his ability to make time for everybody, from just a random child that's walking down the street to his family, to his friends, to his deen, and not for I said, like, obviously we're not the Prophet ﷺ, but that is the model that we need to aspire to. And I think that's we look for all of these like frameworks, and we look for all of these like tricks of productivity and whatnot. When the answer is just there, right? When the answer is there, and Muhammad Faris does a great job with this with Baraka culture and the productive Muslim. Yeah, like, how do you tap back into the natural sense of productivity that's built into our deen, and just tap into that?
SubhanAllah.
MashaAllah. No, I love that. And I guess kind of bringing it back, sorry, we took a fun loop, I would say, but bringing it back to saying yes to the opportunity that came your way. Tell us more about that. You go from, working for someone to working for yourself.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that? And like, walk us through the continued ascension, mashallah.
Yeah, I think maybe people probably when they first meet me maybe have a sense that I might be like risk averse, right? Because I'm a lawyer, and that's kind of like what we do. Like you manage risks along the way. But um, I'm actually very very comfortable with risk as long as I understand what the risk is, and I'm very very comfortable taking that step and taking that leap if I know what I'm getting into. And I think like even like if you just take a step back, I think human beings are like the original risk taker. Like if when Allah like Surah Al-Ahzab says that I offered the trust of the covenant to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they all rejected it out of fear. Right. And we as mankind, we sit up and like, yeah, sure, we got this, right? No problem. And the one way to look at that is to say like we're pre-wired to better ourselves. And maybe the difference is that taking that risk on your own and looking at that as ego or betting on myself versus we're betting that if I move forward with purpose and Allah is behind me. I think that's the thought that was going through my mind, is that if I can take this leap, but it's not me taking this alone. It's Allah is here with me, and inshallah, like He's going to allow me to take this opportunity and do something with it. And if I fail, I fail. Right? There's not uh, um, any kind of like lifelong consequences going to come out of it. And so that's kind of the mindset that I went into it with, was this is an opportunity in front of me. I can always go back to the safe path. I can always go back to doing something that's traditional, right? And inshallah, that'll always be there. But here's an opportunity to do something different. And so, I was able to step into that role. A lot of definitely learning pains along the way, right? It wasn't something that was easy. It wasn't something that was linear. There's a lot of kind of like failure along the way as well. But I was able to take a lot of the experience that I had in working with people, in even some of the Islamic principles of just not talking so much and listening. I think that was one of the really big drivers for me, because I would listen to other people that had done it. I would try to learn from people that already built something, been where I was already. I would listen to the people that I was bringing into the organization that said, "Hey, this isn't working. We need to pivot. We need to change." And it wasn't. I think a lot of times we get like really stubborn in our ways and really stubborn that this is the only way I can build something. So I think those are all things that kind of helped me along the way to accept that risk, accept the pressure of what was being built. And alhamdulillah, like it, Allah opened the doors for every avenue to fall in place to achieve the success that we did, alhamdulillah.
Brother Asheq, I know you mentioned that you had something to fall back to. You knew that risk was worth taking, but you could always go back to your corporate career, and being a lawyer. I guess a lot of young Muslims, when they're trying to make those decisions, they don't have those assets. They don't have that 5-6 years experience, maybe cash, preserves built up to be able to do that. Would you say, in your experience, you were in a position in age and kind of maturity where like you had these things kind of somewhat taken care of, where you didn't have as much risk due to that? Or were you also leaving a lot on the table, and how did you balance the decision to make sure that you weren't hurting yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to discount the fact that I was in a good financial position, alhamdulillah. And obviously I'd invested time in myself to be able to give myself that fallback along the way, right? So I'd invested time in going to grad school. I'd invested time in getting my MBA. I'd done those things. But it wasn't also like I had this definitive path in front of me. Like there was no certainty. I assumed that there was going to be something that comes out of it. But there was no certainty. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you have to, if you're looking for certainty and you're looking for, if you're looking for perfection in your path, then that's always going to hold you back from something, right? So I think people should absolutely be smart about the decisions that they make. And so I certainly don't think that the right answer for every single person is to go out and build their own thing or build their own business. I don't think the answer for every single person is to walk away from a nice corporate job. Like, you can do a lot of benefit in that job. But I think being able to get comfortable with the idea that adversity may come is probably a prerequisite for that. And I think that my sheikh used to tell me this all the time. Like, if you're too comfortable, then you should be worried about that, because it probably means you're in some state of heedlessness.
Yeah.
Like, the dunya is meant to have some adversity, some struggle. Like, it's built into what we are if you look at the lives of the prophets, right? So sadness and discomfort is kind of what brings you back to Allah. So you can either wake yourself up, or Allah's going to wake you up along the way.
What's crazy about that is, like, I think I heard you say this on another podcast, but this is something I think a lot about, which is that, when you talk to a lot of people who it's like, oh no, I think people mistake contentment with like being below average, or just kind of being barely above water. And I think that comes from, Allahu alam, it's almost like a tawakkul, astaghfirullah al-azim, in your paycheck, or in your corporation, and not in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where it's like, the moment we talk about, take a risk, try, no, I can't, there's too much on the table, I have it really good, I only gotta, I log on, stay online, do my bare minimums. So I mean, that's definitely something really, really interesting you kind of talk about there.
I mean, we get trapped into this definition of success, right? It's very hard to break away and rewire yourself from looking beyond the dunya when you create like this cage of success around you. And it does almost become a cage if you let it, because now you no longer feel like you can fail because you have too much to lose, right? You've got the house to lose, you've got your status to lose, what people are going to say.
The golden handcuffs.
Yeah, I mean, they exist for a reason, right? But for us, it's different, because the golden handcuffs for somebody else is like, okay, I know I'm waiting for like a payoff on my equity, and then I'm out going to do something else, right? We put other handcuffs on ourselves because we don't even want to take that step of maybe there's something better that's out there. We get really, really comfortable with mediocrity, right. And I think that runs counter to being that responsibility of a Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, you don't have to do any one particular thing, but you should hold yourself accountable that as a Muslim, I have to have ihsan in everything that I do, and be really, really honest with yourself that am I living up to that responsibility or not?
It's really crazy, because you mentioned coming from Bangladesh, and we're both of Palestinian descent. I always think about, there's like this guilt factor, especially with all that's been happening, and Gaza and all these things, which is that, like, if somebody had the opportunity to come here, like someone from my village, if it wasn't me, right? Like, if I could just switch, the energy is totally different, right? Like, people always see the immigrant who's like, oh, this guy in 10 years became very successful and got really rich and all these things. It's like it's almost like, subhanallah, like this, almost being an American Muslim is like a test, because it's like your leverage, almost just being here with the opportunities available, goes so much further. So that's definitely something I think a lot about. And one thing I kind of want to like get back to is like, okay, you are building the business, you get to, mashallah, go through some tests here and there, of course, because adversity is always there. What moment did you feel like you like made it? What was the height? What was that? What did that look like?
Honestly, like, I don't know that I ever felt like I had completely made it. And there was two reasons for that. Number one, I think that I'm a super competitive person, and so I think my internal wiring is just to like seek out like what's next, which is not always a great thing, to be honest with you. So I was always pushing myself to say, okay, but there's something else. But I would say, like, the moment maybe that I had kind of a reframing of what success meant for me was when I actually did exit the business, right? So we had built it to where we wanted to get to. We had gotten to a point where, like, on paper, we achieved everything we could have wanted to achieve. And once we exited, it wasn't the feeling that I was expecting, right? That feeling of accomplishment, satisfaction, relief, sometimes, right? Meaning none of it was there. And that's when I started questioning, like, okay, have I been thinking about this the wrong way to begin with altogether? And it wasn't until that discomfort sat with me for, maybe a year, year and a half, 2 years almost, that I realized that, okay, maybe my actual purpose was not to build like these businesses or to make a ton of money, but to use that experience to help others avoid those mistakes along the way. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts everybody in different situations. And sometimes your story is a catalyst to help other people in their story. So I would say it wasn't maybe until like I came to Qalam and I felt myself like having some meaning that, okay, Allah has prepared me to help with whatever little that I'm adding here. That I felt like this is aligned with what I've been feeling or what I've been looking for. Then I started to see, other people in that stage. I started to see other people coming up and saying, "Hey, I exited my business and I'm feeling this way," or I've made it to, let's say a 7-figure salary, but I'm working myself to the ground. I don't find like any purpose. Can you give me some feedback? I want it. How do I do what you're doing at Qalam, for example, right? Or I would see young professionals come to me for advice on how do I navigate the challenges that I'm going through right now so I can get to where you are. And I'm looking at them saying, like, I don't think you understand the price you have to pay to kind of get here, and let's not make those same mistakes. So
Yeah.
I think that entire entrepreneurial journey for me was very much so like in the moment, just dealing with what was happening in that world and not being able to zoom out and really look for that alignment, which is part of the reason why I'm so passionate about that now, because I do see founders, I see young professionals, I see people that are really, really conscious about this holistic integration of their life and their faith, and they feel some of that discomfort.
Yeah.
And so how do we help people avoid the same mistakes that we made along the way?
And brother Asheq, one thing that I was thinking about a lot before this conversation, which is that there's you outlined it perfectly, which is that you have two kind of arguable extremes, right? You have the really successful person, let's say monetarily, and just speaking in that sense. Obviously, the whole conversation is about looking at things holistically, but let's say rich and empty and hustling and anxious. And the rich and empty is like telling the hustling and anxious, like, you don't want this.
Yeah.
But the hustling and anxious, which you could say maybe are the younger folk or whatever, are like, you know what? I'm underwater with bills. Life's only getting more expensive. I want to be financially free. I'll take, I'll cry in the Bugatti or whatever it is, right? Like that's what I feel like a lot of people, end up. It's almost like you have to, like Imam Ghazali talks about, like the experiential knowledge is the truest knowledge, right? Like actually going through it. So like with what you all are doing with Miraj, help me understand if I'm 26, right? Or like, what are the steps you take if, like, your rizq is written, right? So let's say I'm a future multi whatever it is heir, financially, monetarily. What is Miraj doing for young professionals so that either way I'm going to attain my rizq? There's nothing stopping me from that. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to attain it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote that for me already. Now, what are you all doing to kind of curate the experience so that it's not, let's say one extreme, alhamdulillah, like we're blessed. It's not like I'm struggling, but as in, like, we're in the hustle, anxious, trying to make it happen. How do I end up here without that emptiness? Or is it that, that ends up leading to it? Like, I'm curious to hear kind of the path you guys are looking to take brothers on.
Yeah, so this is the exact question we're trying to answer, is that we kept finding Muslim men that were doing like fine externally, right? But when you speak to them, you realize they have this internal fragmentation. So they're ambitious, often uber successful. Sometimes there's the guys volunteering at the masjid or even leading the halakat, but spiritually they're inconsistent and they have that emotional feeling of like a lack of purpose. And there's also like this extreme loneliness in men for whatever reason, especially if they're very successful. So we're very, very quick to suffer alone. And there's no spaces where we can have honest conversations about how ambition fits with career, fits with emotional and spiritual disconnect, for example. And what we saw was that it wasn't necessarily a knowledge gap. Like if you talk to people, they know what they should be doing, but it was more of a gap of moving into practice. And so the idea is like, how do we shorten the timeline of that transformation? Because we've lived it, to your point about experiential information, we've lived it. So how do you live it, and how do you share that space? And so when we look at Miraj, we say, look, you don't have to choose. This was all meant to be integrated to begin with. And so we work to create the space for those conversations to happen, the community for that to happen. So at a practical level, we're providing structure, accountability, and suhbah with intention. And so we're doing, let's say weekly coaching sessions in our community where men come in, Sheikh Mikhail walks them through a particular domain of prophetic intelligence. And then we sit and talk about, okay, how does this manifest itself from different aspects of your life? So do you understand the idea of prophetic intelligence, why it's important? And then Uthman may then spend a week talking about how does this apply to your own purpose in your own life? And so how do you take what you're learning now and use that to form your relationships, use that to form your relationship with your wife, with your child, with your parents, and show up in a different way? How do you take that idea of prophetic intelligence, and now I may spend a week talking about how does that manifest itself in your career, in your work, in your job? What does that look like? And so we kind of have that community aspect where people are able to just benefit from the knowledge first and foremost, but then start to benefit from the companionship with each other and the peer experience of going through that journey together with people that are at similar stages in life as you are, with people that are going through the same challenges, that are opening up. And we've seen it. We haven't really like publicly opened the community up yet, but we've got, let's say 30 to 40 brothers that are in there right now. And we can see the interactions and the bonds that they're forming with each other, the conversations that are happening with them. And so just that little bit of connectivity shows you that they come to the realization you don't have to choose this artificial separation, and you don't have to feel like you're doing it alone. And so like, how do we now start to create this realignment with their purpose as the Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and realign them to their purpose? And so we've got this model of, let's say, Tawheed, Tazkiyah, and Umran. And that's really what we walk people through. So Tawheed, understand yourself and your role, strengthen your relationship with Allah. Then the focus on Tazkiyah from an emotional and moral intelligence perspective, which is what we actually teach. And then how does that manifest out in the world? And all three of those can happen concurrently. It's not sequential, but that's really kind of the breakdown of kind of how we take people through, whether it's group coaching, one-on-one, the Founders Network that we're putting together, all have those same principles behind it.
I think, mashallah, it's very, very powerful. And one of the things that I, even speaking to non-Muslims and having a lot of experience, I've been in corporate for about 7 years. Before that, family business for 10. I keep hearing that's the thing. When people have a lack of alignment, no matter what their faith is, they tend to not reach their full potential. And when it comes to like Islamic things as well, growing up, I always thought, well, it's either do this whole dunya thing, be very successful that way and be able to fund other things, or it was like, be a sheikh, be a student of knowledge, leave the whole thing about making money and making like a financial impact and just go be like some poor person. But like, you're helping the ummah with like being a sheikh or something. But it seems like what you're going after is saying, hey, no, this new holistic hybrid person can stay in the corporate game, can be a tech person, can work here while still leveraging your teachings, right? To do it in a holistic way, to where they don't feel like they're two different people, and 9 to 5 they're one person, 5 to 9 they're someone else. That's kind of what I'm getting from you. Is that am I putting that in a good way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the core message is you don't have to choose between deen and dunya, and not everybody's going to be a scholar, right? I mean, obviously we're at Gullah, we want people to come study, we want people to come learn. At the end of the day, we know that ulama is a very like small group of people that are going to go down that path. But we still carry that responsibility. Like at the end of the day, we want everybody to walk away with this idea that you have signed up for this covenant. Like you've already said yes to this trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has entrusted us with, which is, I am going to be your representative on this planet. And that representative has to show up in every aspect of your life. It has to show up in your relationships. It has to show up in your career. It has to show up in your ibadah. It has to show up in every facet. And so when you fragment those different pieces, you're naturally going to feel a misalignment, right? And that feeling of unsettlement doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means Allah's calling you back to realign with Him and your purpose. And so that's where we look at the Miraj, even of the ascent of the Prophet ﷺ, and say, like, at the end of all of that turmoil that he was going through that year, Allah brought him back to Him and gave him salah as his gift to go back to. So let's start there and say, like, okay, reconnect yourself with Allah, and then start living your life with that purpose as your foundation. It's not an accessory. It's not like we're trying to fit Islam into the world. We're trying to reframe our world with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center and then build out from that. And that's really everything that Miraj is doing.
MashaAllah. I was going to ask you for like some takeaways and what people can do, but you kind of already summarized it in your reply. You kind of how someone can do that. With this Mirage program, obviously people hearing about it can go have the links, below the video and all that good stuff. But do you also have like, these retreats, or is it just like you have to be either a member or you're not? How could someone benefit? Is it either all in or nothing, or are there different ways they can get a taste of it?
Yeah, so we've got different levels to join. So we've got our community, which is the easiest way to kind of access us, which is easy monthly memberships on a month-to-month basis. We do go around and do programs around the country. So we'll do a city tour over the course of the next year as well, where we're doing different kinds of programming in different locations. We do have plans for like quarterly masterminds and an annual retreat as well. Annual retreat probably will be limited to members because we want to make sure that we're creating, again, that feeling of suhbah. The one thing we want to get away from is we don't want to feel these transactional relationships, right? There's already plenty of those. You can go to your local masjid and go to a halaqah and feel that spiritual high that you want to get, right? You can go to Sahur Fest if you really want to hang out with a bunch of people, right? There's a lot of different avenues for that. What we really want is we want to form core transformation and core connection with people. And to do that, it takes time. It takes time to cultivate that. It takes time to build out. Like these things don't happen. They don't happen overnight. Your relationships don't form overnight. Your formation doesn't happen overnight. And so we really do want to make sure that people are investing in this idea of connection. So we absolutely will have avenues for people to kind of feel what this feels like in different events. But as much as possible, we want people to be really invested in a long-term commitment to this idea of brotherhood and suhbah and connection.
No, for sure, mashallah. That's amazing, and alhamdulillah, I wish it feels we're just getting started in this conversation. So what that means, Brother Asheq, is we'd love to have you back, inshallah.
Inshallah.
One thing, I'd be curious to kind of walk through with the time we have is like, obviously, there's the opportunity to join these kinds of communities and everything, but there's one thing for sure. I believe that every young, ambitious person, but specifically, every young, ambitious Muslim is going to see in 2 weeks from now, the beginning of a new year. They're going to make goals. They're going to, maybe rethink and look back and have this sense of guilt, like, man, I did not achieve, and probably not the right way to think about it. There's so much ni'mah, so much blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has probably put in our lives that we're belittling. But if there was a handful on the topic of 3 to 5 things you used to, plan every week, or you still plan every week with, what are the kinds of things that you would recommend young Muslim professionals to optimize for kind of moving into the new year, so that it's like, okay, if they feel like they've been stuck in this hamster wheel of not progressing or whatever, let's say step 1 is joining Miraj, right? Yeah. What's step 2? Because obviously I've done coaching, with Brother Uthman and, some others as well. And one thing I'll tell you about coaching is, like, if you don't apply yourself, if you don't put in the work yourself, coaching is only a few hours a week max. The real work happens outside of the coaching. So what is that real work that maybe someone listening today might be able to hear and say, okay, I'm going to start to work on and, reframe my mindset, change the kinds of goals I'm setting, change the aspirations?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say number 1, like, relax. You're not behind, right? Like, it's fine to feel confused. It's fine to feel a little bit unsure at this stage, like 20s, early 30s. I mean, it's normal, right? I think too, especially with the new year coming around, it's a good time to look at the different pieces of your life, your faith, your career, your family, and focus on how we bring that into alignment by building a foundation, not immediate outcomes. Like, let's get away from the idea of, I hate the idea of New Year's resolutions, right? Because then you're just focusing on, this is an outcome or a goal that I'm trying to get to. But let's really, I would say the first thing you should do is take a radical, honest look about who you are, right? Really spend the time to find your why, to find why you're doing what you're doing, why you feel this sense of disconnect. Like, just take the time to think about that. Take stock of your character, take stock of your weaknesses, maybe pick one to fix that you're thinking about. Like, work on yourself first. And then, if you think about some of the habits and maybe some of the mindset that comes with that, like, understand what's triggering some of those feelings. I'm a big component of just writing stuff down. We don't write stuff down at all anymore. So, like, when you feel yourself spiraling or feeling confused or feeling, let's say, disconnected, or if you feel yourself feeling, I feel really good today, or this really made me feel connected to something, like, write it down and reflect on that. I would say number 2 is probably start your relationship with Allah. So if you don't have a daily routine of waking up and doing muraqabah, for example, right? When you do muraqabah and you spend 10 to 15 minutes after Fajr of just sitting in silence, contemplating and connecting yourself in silent dhikr to Allah. If you're not doing salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, right? Just 100 in the morning. If you're not doing istighfar in the morning, like, there's a daily word that comes with that. Make sure your salah is solid, right? Just pray on time, pray every prayer on time. Then end the day with muhasabah, of like reflecting on how the day went. Like, these are very simple things that everybody can do that doesn't take a lot of effort, that grounds you in that relationship with Allah. And then I would say some of the maybe things to avoid is to stop waiting for perfection or complete clarity. I think that is one of the major tricks of shaitan, where he's saying you need everything to line up, everything to be perfect, and now you're ready to go. Whereas, and we know this as founders too. I mean, this is also a starter playbook that if it's 80% ready to go, it's ready to go. Right? If it's 70% ready to go, it's ready to go. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can treat your life the same way. Like, you don't need perfection to start some of these steps. I would say also, when you do these things, you're probably, inshallah, going to feel some kind of spiritual awakening. And that's either going to burn you out or lull you into complacency. We talked a little bit about this, right? So don't go from a 0 to 100 overnight. And don't feel like you've gotten to a point where, like, I don't need to do anything else. Like, really finding that balance in between is important. I think we tend to try to look for, like, every answer at once. So I think that's something to avoid. So, I mean, those are thoughts that immediately come to mind when you think about, irrespective of whatever situation you're in. Like, we could talk about people that are in very specific situations with their career. They're trying to make a choice with their family, or maybe they're getting married, or whatever that is, right? But irrespective of whatever stage in life you are, like, if you do those few things, then you're setting yourself up for success, and you're setting yourself up for the right heart set and mindset to approach some of these conversations that we've been talking about.
That was a lot of good nuggets, great nuggets in that 2-minute time span. So mashallah, we're going to definitely go back and cut that part out and listen to it and, post it out on its own. It was very valuable. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Jazakallah khair, brother Asheq. I wish we could go way much more, but what that means is that inshallah we have a lot more to cover in the future, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Brother Asheq, what would you leave people off with in terms of, like, is there, where can people find you? Where are you most active, and where can people engage with Miraj, stuff like that?
Yeah, so we're obviously active in the community in Dallas. So I love to have everybody come visit us on campus at Qalam. We're on Miraj. You can come to our website, mirajcollective.com. We're going to be launching a bunch of different events throughout different cities around the country. So keep an eye out for that, inshallah. We have Sheikh Mikhail and Osman and myself. We're on Instagram, pretty consistently posting our thoughts and sharing kind of what we've been seeing as we've been going through this journey with Miraj as well. But I encourage, like, as many people as possible to come interact with us and each other in person as much as possible. I think there's something to be said about really creating that connection with people as a meeting. We talked about trying to do this podcast in person, and hopefully, inshallah, next time we'll be able to do that as well.
100%, inshallah.
Inshallah, I think those are the easiest ways to kind of get the thoughts that we're sharing out. Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, wonderful. Well, we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for having blessed us with joining us and having this great conversation. I want to remind the audience here, inshallah, to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. We still have some stats here that like 60 or 70% of people who tune in weekly and listen to us are not subscribers. So please go ahead and support us with that. Help us make some more amazing content and bring on amazing.
And a special call out to the people in Brother Asheq's network.
Yes.
Who are probably going to see this as well. Please subscribe.
100%.
Everybody that's watching, you guys are doing phenomenal work. MashaAllah, Allah continue to increase you and put barakah in what you're doing.
I mean,
and it's really important conversations for us to have as communities,
Yep.
and you guys are at the forefront of those conversations. So I'm looking forward to seeing the growth and all the khair and benefit you're going to bring to people, inshallah.
Allah yabarak fik, jazakallah khair. And one more plug as well. We have a new newsletter. So if you go to our website, deendeals.com, which is also down below, if you sign up, you'll get instant updates to your inbox with summaries, actionable takeaways, free content. So it's not just the recording itself. So if you subscribe, it'll be even better there as well. So jazakumullah khair, everybody. And thank you, Brother Asheq, for honoring us with your presence again. It was a great conversation. And we hope to have you on live, inshallah, next time very soon.
Jazakumullah khairan for having me. It was a pleasure being here. Would love to come back anytime, inshallah.
Allah yabarak fik. Ya Allah. Ma salama.
Assalamu alaikum.
Take care, guys.